What's up, everybody? My name is Nick, also known as Kliquid, and I am joined by my partner in crime, Dustin, or Project KSL, as you guys might know him on Twitter. And we want to welcome you guys to Fantasy Swagger Podcast, where we are going to be focusing on fantasy football as we head into the 2014 NFL season. Now, today, guys, this marks the first weekend of the season, and we are both absolutely pumped. Dustin, how are you feeling about those Broncos right now?
Looking forward to it. Expect a big W tomorrow. Going forward, and expect a good season from the Broncos.
Awesome, man. Are you looking forward to them just destroying the Chiefs in a few weeks here?
It's only 1 week from Sunday, too. That's the best part. You don't got to wait that long.
Snap, baby. I'm looking forward to that. Looking forward to those Chiefs going and just whipping the crap out of the Broncos.
Getting that dick dropped on them.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I wish I could say the same thing about the Cowboys, man. I am fully expecting us to be one of the absolute worst teams in the league this year. Yeah. It's going to be a complete disaster on defense. Offensively, I think we're going to do pretty well, but oh my goodness, it's going to be atrocious on defense. But you know what? That's okay, because I've got fantasy football. And that's how I'm gonna heal my wounds that the Cowboys are gonna leave for me with fantasy football this season, and I'm gonna be looking forward to that top 5 draft pick next year for my boys.
Better hope. Probably 8-8.
I hope so.
16,
I hope so. Dude, if we go 8-8 again, I'm just done with this team.
8-8, no draft pick.
We need to go better than that or worse than that. Just something not 8-8, please.
8-8.
But anyways,
Ryan Mallett.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, on today's show, we are going to be going over a few different things that should help you with your fantasy football team as we head into week 1. And we're going to start off by talking about the Wes Welker and Josh Gordon suspensions. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the foot injury that's causing problems for Arizona Cardinals running back Andre Ellington. Then Dustin and I will be giving you guys our top list of the top 3 fantasy players for each position this week. Then we'll answer a couple of questions that we got from Twitter. And finally, we will wrap things up with our sleepers and busts for week 1 this season. So that's the agenda for today's show. And I want to get right into the biggest news in the league right now, which is the suspensions to Josh Gordon and Wes Welker, the baller wide receivers that they have. And guys, I don't know if you guys have been living under a rock since you drafted your fantasy team. I know some people have, but if you might not be aware, both of these guys are suspended right now. Both of them for violations to the NFL's substance abuse policy. Now, Josh Gordon, because he was a previous offender, is going to serve an entire year suspension, it looks like, while Wes Welker is going to take only 4 games. Now, the thing is that there are rumors circulating right now that both of these suspensions could end up being reduced or possibly even lifted, and that's because the NFL and the Players Union are actually in negotiations, I guess, to modify the drug testing policies in the league right now. And Pro Football Talk is actually reporting that the two sides are close to an agreement, but the details still need to be ironed out. So, Dustin, I want to ask you, assuming that Wes Welker is still owned in most leagues, what does this do for his stock in your eyes? I mean, is he somebody who should be targeted right now in trades, or should we wait until we hear how the suspensions are going to be affected by this whole negotiations that's happening?
Well, I mean, no matter what, after week 4, at worst case scenario, you're getting elite production in PPR. I mean, he necessarily won't be a wide receiver 1 the entire year, but I mean, you could start Wes Welker every single week in that offense, feel good about it. And if the suspension gets reduced, I mean, you can probably bank on, right out of the gate, he'll probably step right in and be catching close to 10 balls a game in that offense. So
you're predicting 160 receptions this year for Wes Welker. You heard it here first, guys. No, I'm just giving you crap, man. But no, I agree. I think Wes Welker is the kind of guy who, like you said, in a PPR format, he is obviously valued more. He's not a giant red zone threat, although at the beginning of last season,
Manning's number 1 last year.
Yeah, I mean, he looked like a monster in the beginning of the season anyway. At least, it didn't pan out that way over the whole course of the season. But I mean, you saw that the production can be there, and I think that a lot of people are negating the fact that Wes Welker is, like you said, an elite player in a PPR format as long as he is healthy and on the field.
That's the thing. The only thing you really got to worry about with him, man, is if that concussion comes, he's probably done for the year. I can't imagine him playing on 4 concussions and whatever that'd be 10, 11, 12 months at that point.
I agree. So to me, I think that Wes Welker is somebody who people should be targeting in trades, especially if the owner that in your league that has Wes Welker is talking to you and he's telling you, man, I'm worried about Welker. He's somebody who, let's say he's somebody who doesn't have a lot of depth at wide receiver. You trade maybe somebody who is a little bit lower on the rankings than Welker, and you give him up to get Welker in return because you probably, hopefully, are someone that's a little bit smarter and maybe you drafted a little bit more with depth. And you didn't leave your bench just completely a barren wasteland behind Wes Welker, who, like you said, has injury concerns. Yeah. So you might be able to fleece the owner in your league and get Wes Welker on the cheap right now before this whole suspension thing plays out. Right. And like you said, I mean, even if he doesn't end up having his suspension reduced, when he does come back in week 5, he is going to be a beast. Yeah. So I absolutely love that. Now, what about Josh Gordon? I mean, is he somebody who you're out there picking up right now if you're in a standard 12 or a 10-team league and he's on the waiver wire right now?
Yep, I'm picking up in every single league I can. Because everyone owns – I mean, in most leagues, you're going to own at least one guy that you just don't care about. That you're there, and if it pans out, whatever. If he doesn't, it doesn't. But you can drop that guy for Josh Gordon. I mean, there's the number 2 receiver last year in PPR. I mean, that upside alone for a guy that's like – if you own a guy like anyone, like a Danny Amendola or anything, and he's your worst receiver, drop him. Who cares? Yeah. And Danny Amendola, no matter what, is not going to be lighting the world on fire. You get Josh Gordon, they actually reduce this, fuck it. You got like a premier wide receiver for nothing.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I mean, I think right now, with this whole suspension situation, I mean, this isn't the kind of thing that we hear rumors about and then nothing happens from it. I mean, This isn't like when they're negotiating the whole giant agreement that they have with the players union. This is just the one thing. It sounds like it just is going to affect the drug testing policy. Yeah. So if that's the case and these things are happening right now, I like Josh Gordon's chances of playing this year. Now, I don't know that he's going to get the entire suspension reduced. I mean, to eliminate, excuse me.
Even if it's 6 games. I mean, even
if it's 6, 8 games, I mean, Josh Gordon can still be an elite fantasy receiver for your second half of the season. Yeah. And in an offense like they have in Cleveland where there's not a whole lot of other options, he could lead the league in targets for the second half of the season. And that's just something that could be massive for your fantasy team. Yeah. So I'm in complete agreement. I think Dustin is right. Just about anybody that has done a fantasy draft, if you look at the end of your draft, other than your defense and your kicker, there's somebody toward the end of your draft that you pretty much don't really care about. Somebody that you're taking a wild shot in the dark on that just it's probably not going to pan out. We all know it's probably not going to pan out. We might have high expectations for a guy like a Marcus Wheaton or somebody like that, but I think if you're looking at a guy like a Marcus Wheaton or a Ruben Randall or even like a veteran guy like a Steve Smith who is now in a new offense, my personal opinion is that I drop any of those guys for just a chance at getting a Josh Gordon.
Yeah.
Would you agree?
Oh, yeah, without question. Any of those guys. Yeah, I mean, it's just the upside alone. I mean, you don't play fantasy football to finish 4th. I mean, you play to win it. So,
I agree.
I mean, you have Josh Gordon and he gets a suspension reduced to 4 games, let's say. You're set.
Yep.
You get a number 1 wide receiver for Danny Amendola, Steve Smith, Jericho Cotchery, whoever.
And let's not forget the possibility, and I mean, it might be a real outside possibility right now, but there is still an opportunity that Josh Gordon could play 15 games this season. He's not going to play this Sunday, but he could play potentially, depending on how things work out, he could play next week. So, I love the opportunity. I mean, like Dustin said, this is elite production. He led the league in receiving last year. We cannot overlook that.
He missed 2 games.
Yeah, it's insane. He missed 2 games and he led the league in receiving yardage. So this is a guy who is absolutely somebody that you need to take a chance on in your fantasy football league. If you're in a 10-team, a 12-team league. Now, if you're sitting there in an 8-team league and you've got a bunch of depth, maybe you don't. Maybe you let Josh Gordon go to somebody else and you don't take that risk. But for a 10-team, a 12-team, a 14-team league like a lot of people are in, most people are in, I imagine, you got to take your chances on Josh Gordon. Go out there right now before these games start this week. Make your waiver wire acquisition on him. There are a lot of leagues where you can pick him up before these games start, and that's what you're going to want to do. So let's move on to the next topic, which is the Andre Ellington situation, and I'm calling it Footgate because we really don't have any idea what the situation is right now with Andre Ellington. I mean, the Cardinals have been extremely vague on the status of their running back, and I mean, he's been dealing with this foot injury all throughout the training camp, it sounded like, and he actually got an MRI this past week, and there have been a bunch of conflicting reports about what that said. I mean, some people are saying that Ellington's going to miss 4, 6, 8 weeks, and other people are saying that he's going to play on Monday night, and he's going to play through this injury. So
it's still questionable.
Yeah, and that's the thing. The official statement right now is that Ellington is going to be a game-time decision on Monday night when the Cardinals host the Chargers. And head coach Bruce Arians is sounding pretty optimistic about it, but as a fantasy owner right now, I don't know how to feel about him going into week 1. I mean, what do you think, Dustin? Do you keep Andre Ellington in your lineup if you have him in your lineup, or do you find somebody on your bench to replace him with? Because we don't know what's going to happen and he's playing on Monday night, do we put somebody in who's playing on Sunday and just punt Andre Ellington's stats for Monday night?
I would. I mean, I'd be looking to trade him, to be honest with you. I'd be looking to try and trade him in every single league I have. Because those type of injuries linger no matter what they are. Even if he plays week 2, I mean, his foot just not going to get miraculously better. He's been with the whole camp. He has a history of injuries since Clemson. I mean,
that's the thing.
I thought he was getting overdrafted anyways to begin with. So, I mean, if someone offers you comparable value for him, yeah, I'm trading him and I'm not playing him week 1 no matter what.
Yeah, and that's something interesting that you brought up is the fact that yes, he has battled injuries throughout not just his professional career but also his college career, and that's a big reason that he fell as far as he did in the draft. The talent is there. You know, the guy has physical skills. He's a multi-threat in the passing game and the running game. He's not a terrible blocker either. So he's somebody that could be a 3-down back for the Cardinals if he were to be staying healthy, but he just hasn't proven that. So, I mean, to me, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit on the trading him thing, and not because I think that he's somebody who you want right now. The reason I'm going to disagree with you is because I don't think that you're going to get enough value right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the right scenario. Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the right scenario that you're getting offered.
Right, and the thing is I would love for Andre Ellington to play and gut through it this week and, you know, put up 70 total yards or something like that, because like you said, I think that what would happen then is that you create this mystique that, okay, maybe he is going to be able to play through this injury, but I'm telling you guys, this is a more serious foot injury than they're letting on. If there are numerous reports that he's going to miss multiple weeks because of this thing, and like you said, even if he does play through this, he's not going to be at full speed. And Andre Ellington's biggest asset is that he's a shifty guy who can make plays in the passing game, and I just don't see that as a realistic possibility for him in the first few weeks of the season. So like Dustin said, I think that Andre Ellington's a guy that you try to ship off. If you can get a great trade for him right now, obviously go for it. I mean, even if you can get 75 cents on the dollar for Andre Ellington right now, I'm taking that.
Yep,
but if after week 1, if he does play this week, I think that you have to really look towards trading him after this week. Now, the other thing that I wanted to ask you about specifically was in regards to who you pick up. Let's say if Andre Ellington does miss significant time, because there are a lot of people who think that he is going to miss, like they said, 4 to 6 weeks or more weeks.
Sure.
And if that happens, do you want somebody in this Arizona backfield? I mean, is Jonathan Dwyer somebody that you're going out there and jumping on right now and putting out your number 1 waiver wire acquisition choice on Jonathan Dwyer?
No. I mean, if you're still in a league where waivers are still active right now and you have to use a waiver position to do it, and you're high now. Just because I think if Ellington does miss significant time, then those backs are just all going to be in some big timeshare shit show, and you don't want any of them. You know, it could be any given week one of those guys that score a TD and the other one's just dead.
Right.
But I mean, there's guys like Benny Cunningham still out there who they're saying is going to split legit carries with Zach Stacey, and he's still available in a ton of leagues. Yep. So I mean, if you
PPR,
really are
PPR with Benny Cunningham, yeah.
I mean, if you have to get a guy immediately that you need to put on your roster to have another running back, I'd look for Benny Cunningham and probably be my first choice.
Okay. That's interesting, and I pretty much agree with that as well. I mean, I think that Jonathan Dwyer is a guy who's going to get picked up in every league if Andre Ellington does end up missing time. If he misses this game, and it looks like he's going to miss more than this week, and guys, if he misses this week, you can pretty much bet your ass that he's going to be out a few weeks. It's going to be one of those things where if he does play this week, yeah, he might be able to fight through it, but he's probably not going to be very productive. But if he doesn't play this week, it's going to be something that's going to hamper him for multiple weeks down the road, and he could miss 3, 4, 5, 6 games, like they said.
I mean, the only positive thing to come from that is that they're saying multiple doctors have looked at it and they said he don't need surgery.
That's good. That's good to hear. But okay, so the thing is, guys, is that this is the kind of thing that happens every single week in the NFL. You have somebody who we don't know what the real status of their injury is, and especially it happens early in the season. This happened last year with Rob Gronkowski. I remember coming into week one, and people were talking about Rob Gronkowski's going to play.
Dude.
He's going to play.
He's a monster.
It was just like what we're hearing right now. But then he didn't play.
Didn't play for like 6 weeks.
Yeah, and then we said, okay, well, he'll play next week. And it didn't happen.
Yeah.
And then he'll play the next week.
Dude, get Zach Sudfeld.
Yeah, and that's the thing is then you start to get this hype about these other players who can fill in their role. And that's not how it works in the NFL. There are certain guys who, yes, can fill in certain roles for people, and certain guys are better than others. But I'm telling you guys, Jonathan Dwyer is not Andre Ellington. They're not even close to the same type of player. In fact, there are other players on this roster who are probably more apt to do something that Andre Ellington would do on the field than Jonathan Dwyer would be. And that's not to say that they're going to get the opportunity, but that the Arizona Cardinals are going to have to change their offense. And you're not going to get 50 reception possibilities out of Jonathan Dwyer. It's just not going to happen.
Another thing you got to worry about too is that if Ellington's injury is a lot more severe than they're letting on, and they put IR or something like that, there's a serious chance they'll go out and sign somebody like Willis McGahee or something. Yeah. And then he's going to get touches. I mean, he won't be a significant fantasy factor, but again, he'll take away from Dwyer's even potential value.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, and that would be an absolute freaking disaster for fantasy purposes if Willis McGahee's out there. Yeah, it just makes it so that there's this mess of guys that you don't want in a pass-first offense, and that's what the bottom line is in Arizona is they're going to throw the ball. Carson Palmer's going to be putting that thing up for Larry Fitzgerald and Michael Floyd, and hopefully both of them are going to be able to have a good season. But if Andre Ellington's not there, I just don't want anything to do with this Arizona backfield. I really don't.
John Brown, too. He's been a monster in preseason.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So let's do a quick rundown here because I know we talked about some guys. You pretty much have to not trust Andre Ellington, and I pretty much agree with that. But just as a comparison, would you right now, with what we know about Andre Ellington, would you start Maurice Jones-Drew tomorrow against the Jets?
Yep.
Or today against the Jets?
It's against the Jets.
Yep.
I still would because I don't think Ellington's going to play, and I think even just MJD's upside of let's assume the worst case scenario and the Raiders get absolutely blown out. They still has a legit shot that MJD gets a goal line TD, and I think that just that TD alone will probably exceed anything Ellington would do.
Okay.
So yeah, I'd roll with MJD.
I think I would agree with that. Now the next one that I had on here was Sean Green at Kansas City. And that's an interesting one because we still don't know what the situation is in Tennessee, but I know a lot of people are in this type of a situation where they drafted Andre Ellington to be one of their starting running backs. Maybe let's say they went running back, wide receiver with their first 2 picks, or maybe they took Jimmy Graham with their first pick, or Peyton Manning, and they didn't go running back with their first 2 picks. And what ended up happening is that they got a let's say a DeMarco Murray for their RB1 and an Andre Ellington for their RB2, and possibly they're in a situation where Sean Green might be their best opportunity for a guy to get carries early in the season. So do you start a Sean Green in week 1 here, or do you take your chances with Andre Ellington?
See, that's so tough because
that Kansas City defense is so good,
No, see, Jake Locker, you might want to start this week. That secondary is atrocious, but I don't think I don't know what Sean Green's best case scenario really is, because Dexter McCluster is going to get touches. He's going back to Kansas City. They're going to get him involved because coaches just do that for the players that are returning. Bishop Sankey was a second-round pick. They'll probably get him some way involved in the game. So, I mean, realistically, what is highest upside potential for Sean Green? Would anyone put legit money that he runs for 100 yards in a TD? Anyone?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
I'd probably roll Ellington. Probably, but it's really coin flip and go with what your gut says, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's one of those situations where you have to look at your individual situation. Are you stacked at your other positions where you could potentially take a goose egg at your running back slot and still end up with a win? Because if so, then I don't mind playing Andre Ellington there. But if you're in a situation where you think it's going to be a tight game, I think you have to go with a guy like Sean Green. And like I said, it really depends on your individual situation. We can't tell you that without looking at your roster.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so that's going to do it for the Andre Ellington discussion. I hope that helped you guys out. But now let's move on to a thing that we're going to do each week, which is breaking down our top 3 matchups and our top 3 players for each week here in the major 4 categories. So in your quarterback position, your running back position, your wide receiver, and your tight end. We're going to give you our top 3 and the reason why we like those guys. So we're going to start off here with the quarterback position. I'm going to ask Dustin to go first here with his number 3 quarterback for the week.
At number 3 this week, I have Colin Kaepernick going up against Dallas in Dallas.
Why?
Come on. You had the worst defense ever, and somehow it got worse.
We do not. Yes, we do.
The impossible happened. Somehow that shit defense got even worse.
It's true.
You lost your best player. You have no secondary.
We lost our best 2 players. We lost our best 3 players.
Sean Green's out too. Yeah. Dude,
we lost our best 4 players because
Jason Hatcher left too. Yeah.
Well,
Jason Hatcher.
And then what's our corner?
Sean Lee.
I can't remember our corner's name right now.
Skandrick's out too.
Orlando Skandrick's out for a suspension.
Down in Cancun, dude.
Yeah, so we legitimately the Cowboys lost their 4 best defensive players from a year ago.
And it was terrible last year.
Yeah.
It was the worst defense in the league. So Kaepernick's going to run all over him. I mean, 49ers
can't really
added
deny
a lot of skill positions. I mean, they added Stevie Johnson,
Yeah.
They drafted Carlos Hyde, They still have Michael Crabtree, they still have Van Ball, they still have Vernon Davis, still have Frank Gore. O-line's in good shape. They got Alex Boone into camp. I can't think of any reason why he wouldn't shred that defense unless he just has the worst day of his life.
Fair. I mean, I can't really deny it. The only thing that I would say is that I think there's a fair possibility that the Cowboys don't really do anything defensively, and the 49ers kind of figure that out and decide that they're just going to run the ball down their throat the entire game and grind the clock.
Right.
But, I mean, realistically, at that point, they're probably already putting up 24 to 28 points, so I think that Kaepernick's going to get his. I like your analysis there.
If they're rushing TDs, too. I mean, that's even better for him, too. So.
Yep. Yeah, and I think sometimes we do overvalue rushing touchdowns or overvalue the possibility of rushing touchdowns in fantasy football. But at the same time, a guy like Colin Kaepernick is always a threat to do it.
Yeah.
And Dallas's defense is so atrocious, guys. I can't over exaggerate how bad they are.
Every week.
It's just atrocious.
It's
going to be one of those defenses. Like Dustin just said, it's going to be one of those defenses where you start everybody against your Cowboys. And I hate to say that because I'm a Cowboys fan, but it's really at that point already. So my number 3 is going to be Nick Foles against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know Jacksonville's roster on defense at least looks decent, but I mean, on offense, they are absolutely horrible. They're not going to be able to move the football. I mean, they're starting 3 rookie wide receivers. Cecil Shorts isn't even going to play this week.
Too, huh? Yeah,
and
about that.
And the Eagles' offense is one of the most unique that we've ever seen in the league.
Yeah, it's so fun to watch.
It really is, and I just don't think there's going to be any reason for them to take the foot off the gas pedal. I think a lot of people are wondering, I think a lot of people are going to take the Eagles in their suicide or their survivor pools this week, but I mean, they're going to assume obviously that the Eagles are going to come out and dominate this game and maybe run out the clock in the second half, but you have to keep in mind that this is a team that allowed Nick Foles to throw 7 touchdowns in one game against the Raiders last year. I mean, that was a game that they won by 30 points almost. And Chip Kelly is not above running up the score, and
Oh,
I
no,
think there's a
absolutely
really
not.
good
Watch Oregon.
possibility that happens. So I like the Eagles this week. I think that they're going to try and send a message, and I definitely like them against the Jaguars this week. So Nick Foles is my number 3 quarterback. Number 2, I have Drew Brees at the Atlanta Falcons. And Dustin, is that yours as well?
Yep. I also have Brees.
Yeah, Drew Brees for both of us here at number 2. And I think that the biggest thing to me in this one is that this is possibly going to be the highest scoring game of the week.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got 2 offenses that are healthy, 2 offenses that have big time playmakers, and good quarterbacks, good fantasy quarterbacks. So I love Drew Brees. I want any part of this game that I can get. Drew Brees is always a good bet to put up a good game. But I mean, he threw for 635 yards and 4 touchdowns with only 1 pick against these teams in 2 games last year. So I mean, I
Atlanta will
think
be a
that
little bit better though this year.
They should be a
worse,
little bit better.
you know?
But you know what? What's so interesting about it is that Atlanta being better might actually mean that Drew Brees is going to put up more fantasy points, because if Atlanta
keep it close.
Atlanta can keep putting up points on the board, guess who's going to keep throwing the ball? It's going to be Drew Brees all day, and he's going to put up 50 passes.
Yep.
So
Graham,
anytime
Colston,
that
any of those guys.
Right, exactly. And anytime that Drew Brees throws the ball 30, 40, 50 times is a good possibility that you're going to have a monster fantasy game. So I like Drew Brees this week. Dustin, I mean, anything else you want to add on Drew Brees?
I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I'd start anyone pretty much going against Atlanta. I mean, other than Desmond Trufant, the secondary really is not very good at all. So, I mean, even if you assume the worst,
and the pass
Colston
rush isn't
takes
great
them out.
either.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, OCU Manure is still their number 1 pass rush threat.
Yep.
It's still just a train wreck on defense. But dude, they signed Tyson Jackson. It's okay.
There you go. Tyson Jackson, the big-time free agency
Number 3 overall pick. Yeah.
There you go, ladies and gentlemen. Number 3 overall pick from the Kansas City Chiefs. Your Kansas City
Good
Chiefs.
drafting.
Moving on to number 1, and I think this one's going to be unanimous as well, right?
Peyton Manning.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Peyton Manning. Yeah, I mean, Peyton Manning, and I put this in quotes. Peyton Manning struggled against the Colts in 2013. He threw for 386 yards and 3 touchdowns.
And that was with Mathis, who just ruined his life all game, and still he did that. And there's no Mathis.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the first game of the season this year. I mean, that was his first road game back in Indianapolis last year. I mean, it was the first time that he traveled back to Indy. There was the nerves.
Presentation too. Yeah, they did that huge presentation for him too.
Yeah, the media was there. He probably had some feels. Let's be completely honest here.
You could see in his face when he was doing the waving shit and everything in the crowd. Oh yeah, he was going through in his head.
And the nerves won't be there in week 1 this week, guys. And I mean, I know a lot of people are a little bit down on the Denver offense right now because they're sans Eric Decker. They're going to be without Wes Welker, but I expect Peyton Manning to just completely destroy this week.
Yep.
I mean, I don't think it matters who he's throwing to be completely honest with you. I mean, it could be you and I out there, and I still think Peyton Manning's going to put up good numbers.
Even then, I mean, he has Emmanuel Sanders. I mean, coming in, that's someone he didn't have last year.
Right.
And even then, you still have Julius Thomas. You still have Demaryius Thomas. Like, it's a elite wide receiver, elite tight end.
Right, exactly. And I think that a lot of people are undervaluing, and we were talking about this before we started the show, but I think that Monty Ball is somebody who can catch passes out of the backfield. I know that wasn't something that a lot of people were hoping for coming into the season. It wasn't a major reason why you drafted Monty Ball, but Noshawn Moreno caught a ton of passes in this offense last year, and there's no reason to think that Monty Ball won't as well.
Yep,
Peyton Manning's going to get the ball.
Yeah, I mean, they've been grooming him for it. I mean, and he's improved on it in the offseason, according to everybody. Monty Ball's really has better hands this year. I mean, and provided his pass protection has improved, I mean, I can't see any reason why he won't be the 3-down back. Ronnie Hillman is god-awful. C.J. Anderson is whatever, and then, I mean, Juwan Thompson's pass blocking looked okay in the preseason, but you have to assume, barring Monty Ball just going out there and shit in the bed every down, that he's going to be the 3-down back. Insane upside in that offense.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move on to our top 3 running backs for the week. Dustin, who do you have at number 3?
I have Monty Ball.
There you go.
Because again, I mean, he's going to catch passes. Like, no one's thinking he's going to replicate the Noshawn numbers from last year. But I mean, Noshawn wasn't known as the premier pass catching back either last year.
That's right.
He just got thrown in the role. I mean, no one even expected Noshawn to even start. They threw Noshawn out there. He caught 60 passes last year or something like that. It was insane.
Yeah.
He's going to add that. Indy's not very good up front or without Robert Mathis. I mean, without Robert Mathis, he probably won't be asked to stay back as much and pass protect in general. When they do, so I think I don't think Indy's that good, and I also think that if they get up on him, they probably won't try and blow him out, so they'll probably give Monty Ball more touches. So I don't think 100 yards and 2 TDs is out of the question at all for him.
Yeah, I completely agree. I like Monty Ball this week. He is not going to be in my top 3, but he's right outside my top 3. And I will tell you guys, if you watched any of my preseason stuff where I ranked running backs, I am as high on Monty Ball as anybody going into this year. I think that guy has a realistic shot to finish in the top 5 at the running back position. I think he is one of the best locks to finish in the top 10 at the running back position as well this season. So very much in love with Monty Ball, little man crush on that guy this year. But my number 3 for this week is the guy who finished number 1 at the running back position last year, and that is Jamal Charles, who is going up against the Tennessee Titans. Now, Tennessee is not a great defense. I don't think that they're a horrible defense. I don't think that they're a defense where you start everybody every single week when you play against them. But I think that a guy like Jamal Charles is obviously going to be your starter.
Love Jamal Charles, no matter what.
It doesn't matter. I mean, if Kansas City is playing Seattle, you still play Jamal Charles.
Yep, don't care.
It doesn't matter. So
22-man Seattle defense, fucking, I'm playing him. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. Jamal Charles is the offense here. I mean, he's probably going to again have a realistic shot of leading the team in receptions this season. And if you're in a PPR league, it cannot be oversold, guys. These guys who catch passes, the guys who catch 70 passes in a season at the running back position, they're getting a 30-point, 40-point swing over the guys who are just good runners.
Yeah, like Adrian even.
Yeah, exactly.
Catch a lot of passes.
Exactly. So, I mean, Jamal Charles to me this week is a great option. He did run for 108 yards against the Titans last year. Now, Jarrell Casey being in the middle is a bit of a worry, but he's one guy.
And he's moved over to end too more than anything else in this 34. They switched with Horton coming in. So, I mean,
Yep.
I mean, even if assuming the worst, they have to double team him every single play. I mean, he's still Jamal Charles and he's still running. So
yeah. So we both love Jamal Charles this week. Let's go to number 2. Who do you have at number 2?
At number 2, I have LaShawn McCoy.
Okay.
He's placed in Jacksonville. You know, I mean, Jacksonville's probably going to be improved. They added Chris Clemens, they added Red Bryant. You know.
Yep.
I like Gus Bradley a lot as a coach, and I don't think it's going to be a flat out blowout game. But again, it's PPR. Nick Foles threw to, I think LaShawn McCoy, he threw to him so much last year. There's no reason to think it won't change. I think Darren Sproles going to that offense is going to be his own separate role. I don't necessarily consider that a handcuff to LaShawn McCoy at all.
Yep.
So, I mean, you LaShawn McCoy in there, I mean, just for the obvious reason, he's LaShawn McCoy. You know, he's just as nasty as it gets, and he's going to get his, no matter who they're playing most weeks. He's in that Jamal Charles, Adrian Peterson, LaShawn McCoy, screw it, no matter who they're facing, I start him every single week. And it's Jacksonville, you know, he's going to have a big game.
I completely agree, and my number 2 is a guy that just made your list there of screw it, I play him every week, and that is, of course, Adrian Peterson, who is going up against the St. Louis Rams. Now, I think that the Rams' defensive line is one of the absolute best in the entire NFL. I am a big fan of what they're doing there and building their team the right way. If they only had a legitimate quarterback, I mean, if they only had a legitimate quarterback, this team would be a realistic playoff. I think they have realistic playoff chances. If they have a legitimate
wide
quarterback.
Still need some work. They took Tavon Austin top 10 for God's sakes.
But. Yeah, true. No, they do need to draft better. I mean, and Jeff Fisher, it's so interesting because Jeff Fisher has made such bad choices sometimes, and then he'll just make amazing picks.
Though. Yeah.
And I don't know.
Kill it.
I don't know what the deal is with that, but I mean, regardless, it doesn't really make much of a difference for this. But the thing is that I think that this defensive line that they have there in St. Louis is so good at rushing the passer, but that actually I think might play into why the Vikings will give the ball to Adrian Peterson this week 20-25 times. And I mean, obviously they're in a situation with Matt Castle as their quarterback where they're not going to be in a huck it and chuck it offense. It's just not going to happen.
Well, I mean, Adrian Peterson going in there.
North Turner is going to be there, but I think people negate the fact that North Turner has had a ton of success with running backs in his over the course of his career.
For him, Tomlinson.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's produced with crappier running backs than Adrian Peterson, and not just LaTanya Tomlinson. I mean, other guys have produced in North Turner offenses as well, and I think that. The thing is anytime that you give the ball to Adrian Peterson 20 times in a game, he's going to be in my top 5 for running backs. Absolutely. I don't care who he's against because he's going to average 4 yards per carry at the bare minimum. It's Adrian freaking Peterson. And I mean, if he averages just 4 yards per carry and touches the ball 20 times, that's 80 yards. Worst case scenario, that's 80 yards. That's not a bad game. It's not a great game, but it's not a bad game. It's not the reason
you lost that week if Adrian Peterson drops an 8 on you.
Exactly. And best case scenario is that he busts off 2 runs for 50-plus yards and he throws down 200 yards with a couple of touchdowns. So I love Adrian Peterson every single week, but I actually like him a lot against the teams that are good at pass rushing because I think that it's going to force the Vikings to give him the ball more often than they otherwise might. Because I know a lot of people are in love with Cordero Patterson this year, and they're thinking that, oh, well, they're just going to throw it to Cordero Patterson every day. It's not going to happen like that, guys. No. Cordero Patterson's going to get the ball, but Adrian Peterson is still by far the focal point of this offense, and that's the way it should be. So number 1 on my list is a guy that you already named, and that was LeSean McCoy. And, I mean, I think that this is just the kind of matchup that you dream about as a fantasy football player. I mean, Jacksonville to me is they're awful. I know you have a higher opinion of them than I do.
Awful, but...
Dude, they're one of the absolute worst.
How many games do you think they win this year, straight up? How many games?
4.
See, I got 6. I think they'll be a 6-10 team, middle of the road.
I mean, 6-10 is. I mean, middle of the road would be 8-8.
I mean, awful to me is like the Chiefs. No, I'm just kidding. Like, I mean, awful to me is gonna be something like I don't know. I think the Browns are gonna be in for a bad year because I don't know the offense knows what the hell it's doing, and a couple other teams like the Raiders. I think are probably gonna be a train wreck again. But
fair.
I don't think
the Jaguars have been an awful team for 3-4 years straight.
Yeah, I mean, they probably had the worst roster in the league last year, top to bottom. They still won 4 games.
I don't think they're that improved.
I mean, Chris Cummins is a really good player.
Good. Okay, fair enough. They've made improvements to their defense. I think that their defense is going to be better, but they do not have the personnel to match up.
Gotta get Bortles in there, baby. Woo.
They just don't have the personnel to match up against this Eagles offense.
Well, no. I mean, there's like maybe 2 defenses in the league that can match up with Philadelphia man for man. Sure.
And that's what I'm saying. I think that. I mean, LeSean McCoy coming into the season was my number 1 overall player in fantasy football, regardless of the scoring format. You name it, PPR, high touchdowns, standard scoring, doesn't matter. LeSean McCoy is my number 1 guy going into the season, and there's no reason for me to jump off the train right now, especially against a team like Jacksonville. I mean, if for some reason the Jaguars do end up, staying in this game scoring wise, I think that the Eagles are going to have to rely on LeSean McCoy because I think that Nick Foles, for all the amazing numbers that he put up last year in terms of touchdown to interception ratio, we saw in the preseason that he is capable of throwing interceptions.
I mean, and what he showed, might be an anomaly. I mean, it's not out of the question to assume that his last season was a complete anomaly.
It's an anomaly no matter who you are. I don't care.
Yeah, he's not doing 27-2 again, but I mean...
Yeah, but the thing is, to me, is that I think that this team is going to rely a lot on LeSean McCoy. I know, like you said, there is the Darren Sproles situation, but like you said as well, I think that they're a different player. They're a different player, and I've heard, and I don't have any reason to believe otherwise, that Chip Kelly is going to have both those guys on the field at once. Mm-hmm. So if that happens, I like the opportunity for LeSean McCoy even more because they can put Darren Sproles out there and confuse the defense and then just hand it off to LeSean McCoy up the middle for 6.
Yeah, imagine backfield packages with Foles and LeSean McCoy and Darren Sproles in the backfield. It'd be out of control.
It's beautiful. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, out of control.
So that's why LeSean McCoy is my number 1 this week. I know he's high on your list as well, but let's hear who your number 1 is.
Number 1, I have Jamal Charles. Because Tennessee is going to be a train wreck this year. Their secondary is atrocious. And he's Jamal Charles.
They got McCourty. What are you talking about? No, I'm just joking. I actually like McCourty.
So Jason McCourty is actually pretty good.
No,
he's still shit McCourty. He'll always be shit McCourty.
That's right.
But, Alex Smith is a pile of shit too. And he's going to be throwing to, he doesn't make any passes downfield most games. So,
yeah.
First, second, third reads to Jamal Charles. So he's going to get a ton
and that's
the
way it should be. Let's be completely honest here. I mean, as much crap as you and I give Alex Smith, I mean, is there somebody else in the offense that we're missing that's a big-time playmaker?
No, because they don't draft worth a shit, and that team's terribly ran. But
so there you go. I mean, I'm in agreement with you.
You have to spread it around a little bit. You can't give him 100 touches a game and just blow out his knees in week 4 or anything. I mean,
he stayed healthy last year, Dustin.
Yeah,
he stayed healthy last year.
I mean, every reason is there to start is for him to be the number 1 back. He's bad defense. He's going to play. Bad team potentially. He's going to play. He's at home. Chiefs do better in Arrowhead. I think that Alex Smith is going to be throwing him like he always does. So
I agree.
I mean, it's not out of the question he catches 8 balls, rushes for 100 yards, and scores a TD.
Yeah.
So
and then you're talking about number one fantasy production. So
absolutely.
there you go. All right, so let's move on to wide receiver. And at my number 3 wide receiver, I have Megatron, Calvin Johnson, who is going up against the New York Giants. Now, obviously, Calvin was the number 1 wide receiver off the board in most leagues. And, I mean, there's good reason for it. I mean, this guy is legitimately I can't think of a guy who is more physically talented than Calvin Johnson that I've ever seen play the game of football at
Randy
any
Moss.
position.
I mean, that's close, but I mean, you probably still give Calvin
Moss.
the edge. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Moss is faster, but he's not as tall, and he's not as big and not as strong. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I love Randy Moss as well. I mean, a big Randy Moss guy. But, I mean, Calvin Johnson is amazing. And there's no reason to think that he's not going to put up another monster season like he has since he came into the league, realistically. I mean, the guy is an absolute beast. Now, the only concern with this matchup is that he did only catch 4 passes for 41 yards when these teams played last year. But for those who watched that game, will tell you he was fighting through a knee injury in that entire game. He was not his usual self. And, I mean, you could totally see it on the field if you were watching. He was not running at full speed. And Calvin is fully healthy coming into this game. The Giants' defense is a shell of what we used to remember it being. I mean, it's not what it was before. Yeah. And I expect him to put up a nice Calvin Johnson-like game. I really do. I think that he's going to – I think the 100 yards touchdown is a very realistic possibility. He is a lock to be a good wide receiver just about every single week.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'm worried about that would be, you know, obviously he's going to face DRC. Who's, you know, I mean, not that DRC is an amazing corner, but he's better than the Giants had last year.
True. But who's your number 3 for this week?
At number 3, I have Dez Bryant, who draws San Francisco at home. What?
Throwing up that X. Let's go, baby.
I mean, San Francisco's not exactly known for their great corners, you know, and one of Dallas, I mean, they won't have Aldon Smith, they won't have Navarro Bowman. So, and actually, frankly, one of the strengths of, maybe the biggest strength of Dallas' whole team is the O-line now at this point. They put so many high picks into it and everything else. So, Romo should have time to throw the ball. He's going to get the ball to Dez Bryant. Dez Bryant is an elite wide receiver. He wins over almost any corner. I can't see any way he has a terrible game. So I think he goes in there. And I mean, an upside for Dez Bryant. I mean, realistic upside for Dez Bryant's 2 TDs easy.
Yeah.
You know, 90 or 100 yards, 2 TDs is not out of the question at all for Dez Bryant any given week.
Yeah.
And I like the matchup with any potential corners he face on San Francisco.
Yeah, and you got to love the possibility that the Cowboys fall behind early in this one. I mean, Dustin had Colin Kaepernick in his top 3 at the quarterback position, and if that happens, if Kaepernick puts up those kind of numbers, Cowboys are not going to be running the ball. They're going to be trying to huck it and chuck it.
Hug it.
Yep. So, I mean, if that happens, Tony Romo is going to be looking towards Dez Bryant plenty of times. I mean, 10, 15 targets is not even – it wouldn't even be surprising.
It's not out of the question at all. Yeah.
So, I mean, I absolutely love Dez Bryant this week as well. He barely missed my top 3. But number 2 on my list is A.J. Green, who is going up against the Ravens. I mean, A.J. Green obviously is a lot like Dez Bryant in what I mean by that is that he is a good possibility to put up a huge game every single week. Now, he did actually pretty much destroy the Ravens last year. He had over 200 yards and 2 touchdowns in the 2 games that he played against them last year. And I mean, that's a division rival. That's a team that has had an opportunity to go up against him, to try and game plan against him, and he still beat their asses up.
Was Webb healthy last year? I know Ladarius Webb's healthy. Ladarius Webb's a pretty good corner. I mean, he's not like amazing, but pretty good corner.
And that's the thing is, I mean, it's true that Ladarius Webb is the kind of guy that could match up against A.J. Green and potentially give him trouble.
Yeah, I mean, he'll draw A.J. Green. I mean, actually, it might be Jimmy Smith. Jimmy Smith's not bad either.
I think that Ladarius Webb played all of last year. I really do. I know that 2 years ago he missed
he tore the ACL
significant time. Yeah. Off the top of my head, I can't guarantee that, but yeah, I mean, I think that he did play the whole year last year.
Yeah, I think he did too, and he still tore him the hell up. And they had Jimmy Smith last year too, so fucking start him.
Yeah, I mean, and AJ Green is just a guy that you start no matter what.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously, it doesn't matter what the matchup is. If you know that they're going up against Seattle and he's going to be 1-on-1 with Sherman, you still start AJ Green.
Yep,
you have to.
And he don't got balls; he'll throw it down the field. He doesn't give a shit.
Exactly. So I love that, and I want to hear who your number 2 is this week.
At number 2, I have Demaryius Thomas.
Yep.
I mean, we already talked about the Denver-Indy matchup earlier on, but, I mean, every potential good reason in the world is there to start Demaryius Thomas.
Yep.
Indy's, I mean, I don't expect it to be a very close game, if I'm being perfectly honest with you. I could easily see something like 38-21, easily, 38-17. So I think Demaryius Thomas is going to have a gigantic game. They've been moving around a lot, I mean, it's the Denver offense. It's Peyton Manning with, an elite O-line, elite skill positions. The defense will be so much improved. Legit possibility that, there's multiple turnovers in that game, too, for Denver, some more scoring opportunities. I mean, everything's there.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's actually interesting about this whole matchup is that with Wes Welker and Eric Decker out, who do you think Peyton Manning's going to be looking toward?
Hey, baby.
I mean, it's going to be Julius Thomas a little bit, but it's going to be quite
Emmanuel Sanders, too. I'm starting Emmanuel Sanders this week, too, without question.
Yeah. Anyway, Emmanuel Sanders. I love Emmanuel Sanders. And just to let you know, guys, Demaryius Thomas, I agree with Dustin. He is my number 1 wide receiver this week up against the Colts. And, I mean, the guy is just ridiculously physically skilled. And it wouldn't be surprising to see Peyton target him 15 times in this game. And, I mean, that could mean absolutely massive numbers for a guy like Demaryius Thomas. The Colts don't have anybody that can match up against him. I mean, you could have possibly made a case.
I mean, Vontae did okay last year. I mean, in fairness to Vontae Davis, he did okay. But, I mean, honestly, without even sounding like too much of a homer, there was a lot of pulling going on that game that wasn't getting low.
And that's one of the things that I was going to bring up for this game is I think that the Colts played a lot of physical, quote-unquote, defense that is not going to be allowed this season.
Right, yeah. There was a whole lot of contact past 5 last year game, so...
Yeah, exactly. We've already seen it called in the preseason. We've seen it called in the first regular season game. They are calling this stuff. They're calling the nitpicky stuff that they would have not have called in the past. And I know that you don't get the points when they do when they get the penalties, but the fact that these guys
for the next play though.
Exactly. The fact that that's going to be in their head. They're going to be thinking, okay, I can't touch him down the field, and Demaryius Thomas is going to go skyrocket up in the air and catch a touchdown on him. Yeah. So, I mean, I love Demaryius Thomas this week. I don't think that they have I mean, Vontae Davis is a good player, but I don't see it as a realistic possibility that he's going to be able to keep Demaryius Thomas in check for an entire game. I just don't see it.
Not that he'll have a bad game by any means. I mean, he's my number 2. So
yeah. So who's your number 1 then?
Calvin Johnson. I mean,
okay.
Come on. I mean, every week is probably more often than not Calvin Johnson to be my number 1 wide receiver every single week.
Yeah, because I think so. I think so too. I mean, obviously we talked about this one already, but I mean, he's Calvin freaking Johnson. So
yeah, no matter who he's playing. Again, he has the Richard Sherman clause where it's like, I don't care, fuck it, I don't care who he's playing. I'm starting him. I'm expecting a big game. Fuck it.
All right, so let's move on to our tight end position because I think that we have a little bit of a difference here at number 3, but I want to hear what you have to say.
For number 3?
Yep,
number 3 I have Gronk. Because he's Gronk. I mean, you start him, if he's healthy, I don't care if it's limited or anything. I mean, last year he was limited, he goes out week 1, he just shits all over the Jets.
Yeah.
So I don't care if he only plays 15 snaps a game, he'll get every snap in the red zone, and Brady looks to him beyond anyone else. They're an entirely different offense with Gronkowski on the field. So if Gronk's playing, even if it's 10 snaps a game, I'm playing Gronk over like 90% of tight ends.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. Now, Gronk did miss my top 3. I have him at number 4 for this week. But the guy that I have at number 3 is Vernon Davis. And Vernon Davis, to me, is the kind of guy who, yes, his production is very, very much based on his possibilities of getting into the end zone. But he was second. He was second in the league last year in terms of touchdowns at the tight end position. He finished with 15 touchdowns, 15 touchdowns total on the season. He scored 2 in the playoffs, 13 regular season touchdowns. And the crazy thing is that he scored in 8 of the 49ers' final 10 games, including the playoffs. And that's including when they had Crabtree back.
Yeah, matchup nightmare.
And that's the thing is he's going up against the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
and
my
Cowboys. Yeah, my Cowboys have absolutely nobody to match up with Vernon Davis. This is going to be an absolute train wreck. If Vernon does what I think he's going to do, I can see why Dustin has Colin Kaepernick in his top 3.
I mean, the only realistic scenario to not have him in your top 3 is that, I mean, I shouldn't say top 3 because he's not mine, but to have him not 5, as projected to be an elite starter that week is if you absolutely are hell-bent, absolutely convinced that it's going to be a grind-out game and it finishes like 17-10 because they're just grinding the ball the whole way, and then there's 2 TDs to go around, and one's a Frank Gore rushing, one's a Kaepernick rushing. That's the only way. You're not going to expect elite production out of him.
Yeah, and Crabtree, by the way, too, is not fully healthy coming into this game.
Oh, yeah, he's been nicked up a lot, yeah.
So I think that that's something that does play a little bit into Vernon Davis's favor. I do like him a lot this week. He's, like I said, my number 3 tight end. He would be higher if these other 2 guys weren't so ridiculously good, and I think you and I are in agreement with them.
2 and 1.
Number 2, we have Julius Thomas.
Yep.
Yep,
No
Julius
question.
Thomas. I mean, the Broncos, like we've already talked about, up against the Colts, and I hate to just it's crazy because we basically have a Bronco
drum over and over again.
Yeah, the Broncos have a guy at every single position here, but the thing is that what's insane about this offense is that we could have all of these guys here in the top 3 at the position, and they could all finish there. This isn't over-exaggerating. So, I mean, the Colts defense is not terrible, but it's certainly not very good. And I think that Julius Thomas...
their best player. That's another thing, too. You can't understate the fact that they're without Robert Mathis.
Yep, and he's the only guy. He's the only guy that's going to cause any problems for Peyton.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you think Denver's worried about Jordan Werner? I mean, come on.
Yeah. So I think that Julius Thomas is going to benefit a little bit from the fact that Wes Welker is suspended. Not that I think he's going to play the same role as Wes Welker by any means, but I think that going over the middle, and just finding the holes in the defense where Welker would have otherwise been.
Well, who they're going to use him to cover him? I mean, I can't think of anyone they have to cover him. I mean, I can't think of anyone. I mean, because they can put dirty 30 on him. They're not going to use they don't have Antoine Bethea anymore. Not that I think they would use Bethea anyways, but they don't have anyone to cover him.
And the other thing is too is that he did score a touchdown against this defense last year. So I mean there is a realistic possibility that he gets into the end zone again this week.
Super realistic possibility.
I like Julius Thomas a lot. I like him every week until we start to see that Julius Thomas was just a figment of our imagination from 2013, and he doesn't produce anywhere near what he did last year. Julius Thomas has to be your every week fantasy starter at tight end. You do not look at the matchups, but if you are looking at the matchups, you got to like this one.
Maybe Seattle.
I like
That'd be the only one because Seattle's kind of concerning, but
yeah, sure.
But even then, I'm still playing him because fuck it, you just don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is that tight end is that you don't really have other options.
Yeah,
I mean, if you're in a 12-team league and you drafted Julius Thomas, who's your tight end too?
I mean, shit. I mean, best case scenario, someone like, Zach Miller, Heath Miller kind of guy.
Miller, yeah. So, I mean, you're not benching Julius Thomas. I don't care if they're up against
no matter who he's playing. Screw it.
I don't care who the other person is playing, and I don't care if Julius Thomas is up against Seattle. You still start Julius Thomas. Yeah. So, I mean, to me, that's an obvious one. And then number 1, I think everybody should have this as their number 1 tight end. Until it's proven otherwise, Jimmy Graham is the number 1 fantasy tight end. He will be the number 1 fantasy tight end just about every single week, no matter what the matchup is. Yep. And this is a great matchup. I mean,
amazing for him.
You know what's crazy? I went before we started this podcast. I went in and looked at what Jimmy Graham has done against the Falcons over the course of his career.
He owns them.
7 touchdowns in his past 7 games against the Falcons.
Yep.
And, I mean, if you don't think there's a good possibility that he gets into the end zone again this week, you're kidding yourself. The guy is the target in this offense. It used to be Marcus Colston. I mean, it used to be Reggie Bush even a little bit. But now it is Jimmy Graham. He is a guy who puts up wide receiver 1 numbers from the tight end position.
Wide receiver 1 numbers.
Yeah. I mean, he led the league in touchdown receptions.
Yeah, I mean, there's Jimmy Graham and there's Calvin Johnson, and those 2 guys are the biggest week-to-week advantages you can possibly have.
Yeah, so you got to love Jimmy Graham, and I think that is going to wrap up what our top 3 players are at each position. So let's now move on to our Q&A. Now, this is a little segment that we decided to start on. We got a couple questions from Twitter, but I want to hear this week, guys. If you guys have questions, make sure that you leave them in the comments section below of this video. We will answer as many questions as we can, good ones, obviously. If you leave comments like, who should I start, Alex Smith or Peyton Manning? We are not going to answer that. Yeah. And we did actually get asked that by just multiple some trolls.
Yeah, multiple times
by multiple people. No, Alex Smith will never start against over Peyton Manning. I don't care if Peyton Manning is out there with only his left arm.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning is starting over Alex Smith.
Yeah, fuck it. Punt the ball. Doing better than Alex Smith.
Exactly. So, all right. So let's get into the real questions. And this first one comes from a guy named Megadose Gaming, and he asks, who is your biggest sleeper heading into the 2014 NFL season? So, Dustin, I'm going to have you answer that one first.
First guy that pops into my head is Jay Cutler.
Okay.
Because Chicago has, they have Megatron. They have Alshon Jeffrey. They have Brandon Marshall, Matt Forte, even Martellus Bennett.
Yep.
O-line's improved. It's a lot better than where it was a couple years ago. that offense, and they have Mark Trestman too, who just knows offense. So you have to assume, I mean, he's getting drafted so late. What is he going in, like the 13th, 14th quarterback in some leagues? I mean, it's insane.
It's super, super late for Jay Cutler.
Yeah,
I mean,
and he has legit top 5 upside.
Yeah.
I mean, if you combine him and Josh McCown's numbers from last year, if you combine them, they're a top 5 quarterback straight up.
Yep.
And I don't see any reason why they can't get better with another year in that offense. So what's added out to me is Jay Cutler.
I completely agree. I had Jay Cutler as my guy as well for this list. And I mean, the reason for it to me is that Jay Cutler has 2 guys at the wide receiver position who are going in the top 20 picks overall. I mean, Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall are both going in the first 2 rounds of most fantasy football drafts at this point. I mean, yeah, and then you throw in Matt Forte. And Matt Forte obviously is a running back, but he's going to be one of the elite pass catchers in the league as well. So, I mean, to me, a guy like Jay Cutler, the fact that he's not a fantasy starter in a 12-team league, you're out of your mind. If you have Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey in your top 10 at the wide receiver position, then by default you have to have Jay Cutler up there.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if you want to say Jay Cutler's going to put up numbers, then that's great. But you can't be high on Brandon Marshall and Alshon Jeffrey. Then you just can't.
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I completely agree with that. Obviously, the only real concern with Jay Cutler is health. I mean, obviously he's going to throw picks because he's Jay Cutler. But, I mean, the thing is, though, is that the guy has obvious 30-plus touchdown potential, 4,500 passing yards.
Potential, yeah.
People don't realize this, but he and Josh McCown last year, if you combine their numbers, they were the number 2 fantasy quarterback.
Oh, they were 2?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. I thought they were like 5.
No, they were the number 2 fantasy quarterback in terms of
way,
overall production.
Yeah,
absolutely insane. So, I mean, those 2 guys together put up just ridiculous numbers. And, I mean, obviously, you look at the pure numbers, Josh McCown did actually outproduce Jay Cutler on a game-to-game basis, but not by that significant of an amount. So I still think Jay Cutler has top 5 quarterback potential this season, and for where he's going, like Dustin said, 14th at quarterback or so, that is absolutely ridiculously too low. There's absolutely no excuse for him going that low. I do not like it one bit where he's going. I think he's got to be
the one to capitalize on it, though, if you took him. I mean, that's a huge coup
exactly.
for you if you did.
Exactly. So I love Jay Cutler. I do have him as my starting quarterback in a couple of leagues.
Yep,
so I'm putting my money where my mouth is on that. Now, another guy who I think is somebody who could potentially break out this season is a guy who, and I hate to go back to the Denver Broncos, but a guy named Emmanuel Sanders.
that was my other one, yeah.
Yeah, and this is a guy who is a new acquisition to the offense, and a lot of people look at him as being a guy who is just purely a deep threat. And I think that is very, very much overlooking his realistic possibility of being a guy who catches 80 or more passes this season. With Wes Welker being on suspension right now, and we don't know whether he's coming back in the first 4 games of the season or not, we obviously know he's going to miss week 1. So we're going to see what Emmanuel Sanders can do. But I think that he is going to play more in the slot than people are realizing. I think that he is going to do kind of what he did in Pittsburgh, which was move both from the outside and the inside and go deep. I think he's going to cause a lot of problems for defenses that try to put, their big physical cornerback on him that can't keep up, and then he's going to toast him deep.
Yeah, he's got some wheels on him, without a doubt. He's got elite speed.
Yeah, so I think that Emmanuel Sanders is a guy who I could realistically see putting up 10 touchdowns this season, and he's currently going as the 27th wide receiver off the board, which means he is a wide receiver 3, and to me, he has low-end wide receiver 1 upside.
Yeah.
So
I absolutely he's inheriting Eric Decker's role. Eric Decker in PPR last year finishes the top 10 wide receiver.
Right.
And he was getting drafted around the same range. I mean, he's inheriting that role with potential to have a bigger role because there's going to be no Welker maybe for 4 games.
Right. And the thing is I don't want to compare him directly to Eric Decker.
Oh, no, they're nothing alike, but
they're not similar. But just the fact that they're going to be on the field with Peyton Manning. I mean, Peyton Manning makes everybody good.
Yeah.
He really, really does.
And Emmanuel Sanders is crazy physically talented, too. I mean, they're designing so many plays specifically for Emmanuel Sanders, screens, everything.
And we saw it in the preseason. It's not we're just going off of we're not just going off of pure speculation here, guys. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders destroyed defenses in the preseason. He had a 2-touchdown game in the preseason. These guys were barely playing in the preseason. He was putting up 2-touchdown games.
100 yards at halftime. Just shitting on him.
So, I mean, I love Emmanuel Sanders. He is my number 2 sleeper behind Jay Cutler. So I think we're both in agreement on those 2 players. Very interesting, but I mean, obviously that's going to happen when we sit and talk about this kind of stuff. But I mean, I think that both of them have a realistic shot of finishing as a QB1 in Jay Cutler's spot, which I expect him to. I think Jay Cutler finishes easily in the top 12, and Emmanuel Sanders, I would not be surprised if he's a top 12, top 10 wide receiver this year as well. And there's no reason to think as well, guys, that Demaryius Thomas can't be a top 5, top 10 wide receiver and also Emmanuel Sanders, because it happened last year with Eric Decker. And not to mention Wes Welker was still productive. Yeah. And Julius Thomas was still the number 3 fantasy tight end?
Tony Gonzalez was 2 in PPR, so yeah.
Yes. So I mean, these guys have the realistic shot of putting up huge numbers, guys. I mean, obviously you can't expect Peyton Manning's going to replicate what he did last year.
Yeah,
That's just too ridiculous. But I mean, hey,
O-line's better.
If somebody can do it, it's Peyton Manning.
Yeah. No
so,
doubt.
All right, so let's move on now to our first week 1 question, which is Matt Ryan or Tony Romo. And this comes from Showtime. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Showtime Doster. Doster. Yeah. So he wants to know, do you play Matt Ryan or Tony Romo here in week 1? I'm going to let you answer that.
That's so tough. You know,
it really is.
It's
close.
Like, that's such a coin flip that I mean, gun to my head, I'd probably say Matt Ryan, just for the sheer fact that I think that Atlanta is going to be better this year. And he gets back Roddy White, healthy Julio Jones. You know, they're without Tony Gonzalez, but having those 2 guys back is so big for him.
Yep.
They drafted Jake Matthews, who's pretty good in the preseason, so he'll play a nice role in the offensive line. And I think that game could be. I don't know if necessarily think it could be a super close shootout, but I think Atlanta could put up, you know, in upwards of 21 points. So I could easily see him getting, you know, 3 passing TDs because Steven Jackson's a pile of trash. But,
I agree.
You know, but I mean, if you're playing Tony Romo, I don't think that's bad either. I mean, San Francisco's defense isn't going to be what we necessarily think that defense usually is. They're without Bowman. They're without Aldon Smith. You know, those are 2 of their probably best 3 players on that defense. They're both missing that game, so it's not out of the question. That game could be a shootout too. Yep. But I'd probably pick Matt Ryan by a hair.
And I completely agree. I mean, it kills me to go against Tony Romo here, and I don't mind Tony Romo this week either, guys. I mean, I think that he's a solid QB1 this week. But the thing is that you're looking at an offense in Dallas that is going to be up against an elite defense. Now, granted, like Dustin said, they are missing some of their key components, and they've had guys leave in the offseason and, you know, all these type of different things. But the bottom line is that the San Francisco defense is not just based off of their players. It's scheme as well.
A lot of scheme.
And I mean, some of the big guys are still there. Some of the big guys that make that defense work. Yeah, they still have P. Willie in the middle. And as much as I love Tony Romo, I think that the Cowboys are going to struggle in this game. I think that they're going to pass the ball plenty. Don't get me wrong. There's going to be opportunities for guys like Dez Bryant. There's going to be opportunities for even guys like Jason Witten in the offense. But I think that the possibility of them putting up 40 points is basically not there. I don't think that it exists. Now, with Matt Ryan and the Atlanta offense, I think there's a good possibility they put up 30. Yeah. I really do. Not that New Orleans hasn't improved in their secondary, because I think that they have.
I mean, Jared Ford's a big signing for them, yeah.
He is, absolutely. And I think that that's something that's it's gonna take a little bit of time before I think that really comes into fruition, though. I don't think he just steps in and then is just instantly amazing in that defense. I think that it's gonna take some time to actually develop.
Yeah, so, gel. Certainly.
So I want to see what happens with that. And I mean, Matt Ryan isn't a terrible fantasy quarterback. He had a terrible season last year, but there was a lot of different things that went into that. Roddy White was injured basically the entire season.
Yep.
Julio Jones missed a good chunk of the season. But before Julio was hurt,
monster.
He was leading the NFL in receptions. He was leading the NFL in yards. The guy was an absolute beast, and he's back. All reports are that he looks like the old Julio Jones. And when Roddy White got healthy last year at the end of the season, he was tearing it up. I mean, the guy was averaging like 8 receptions a game I think he had 40-something receptions in the final 5 games of the year. That's incredible.
Might go down a bit with Julio coming back, but yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I think it will. But I think that Tony Gonzalez being gone is going to hurt the offense overall. But I see Roddy White stepping in. I see him stepping up and making some of those plays over the middle. I like Matt Ryan's opportunity in this game to throw 3 touchdowns. So to me, Matt Ryan barely edges Tony Romo. But I think, like I said, I have Matt Ryan ranked 6th and Tony Romo ranked 8th. at quarterback this year, so it's real close.
Yep.
I wouldn't, if you played Tony Romo, I wouldn't call you stupid, and I don't think Dustin would as well.
No
so,
way.
I mean, you probably drafted them right around one another, so, I mean, you're going to be in these type of situations all season.
Yeah, Ryan's ADP is slightly higher, but they're real similar.
Yeah. So, all right, next one is from Davis1142, and he asks Brandon Cooks or Joique Bell for a flex in week 1. Now, unfortunately for this question, we do not know if it is a PPR league or a standard scoring league. I'm going to assume for the sake of this conversation that it is a standard scoring league, although obviously we would need to know that if you guys are sending in questions. Let us know your scoring system. Even possibly let us know how many teams are in your league.
Be more specific.
And how many of an individual position that you have to start, if that's appropriate for the question. But, okay, so one more time. Brandon Cooks this week, rookie Brandon Cooks for the New Orleans Saints, or Joique Bell?
I'm going with Joique Bell.
Okay.
Because I think, we don't know Cooks' role. I mean, I think he was listed as the wide receiver 5 on their depth chart.
I think he's moved up to number 3.
He's up to 3. I mean, even still, as much as I like Drew Brees, as much as I like Jimmy Graham, as much as I like anything that has to do with New Orleans offense this year, we know for sure what Joique Bell's role with that offense is. And it might be bigger this year even, because, I mean, he's straight up has caught more passes in the last few years than Reggie Bush.
Yeah.
And he's the goal line back. And they're facing the terrible Giants defense. So I'd probably, without a doubt, start Joique Bell over Brandon Cooks in a standard.
Yeah. And, I mean, that's what I said as well. I think you have to go with Joique Bell this week. Now, I know there's some temptation to go with Cooks because Kenny Stills is out. And, I mean, he's the most obvious guy to go deep in this game. But New Orleans is just so unpredictable, man. I mean, the only guys that we know are going to touch the ball in this offense are Drew Brees and Jimmy Graham. Yeah. Everybody else is a crapshoot. I mean, Bell might be splitting touches with Reggie Bush, but he proved last year that he's capable of putting up good fantasy games even if he's splitting carries.
Yep.
So I like him. I mean, another thing to look at as well is that Joique Bell ran for 91 yards and a touchdown and caught 10 passes for 63 yards and a touchdown against the Giants when these teams played in Week 16. So, I mean, it was his best game of the year when these teams played. And obviously we can't expect that again, but it is something to think about. And that was a game where Reggie Bush still touched the ball, I think, 12, 14 times.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like Reggie Bush didn't touch the ball. So, both these guys are going to be involved in the offense. I like the possibility of Joique Bell doing well this week. I think he's a much bigger lock to get some points than Brandon Cooks is. So if you're in a situation where these guys are your options for week 1, I think you probably have to go with the safer guy until we see that Brandon Cooks is who he could be, which is he could be a really, really beastly player for this offense. Yep. But we just don't know what it is at this point.
Yep. Wait and see with him. Start the sure thing.
Yep, exactly. So speaking of Joique Bell, this is another question that we got from BeakBoy333, and he asks, who do you think is going to be the running back to own between him and Reggie Bush by the end of the year?
Again, I'm going with Joique Bell. And it's just because, again, Reggie Bush is not going to be the goal line back. It's going to be Joique Bell. Joique Bell is always going to be heavily involved in that offense. And like I said, straight up, even in PPR, he's caught more passes than Reggie Bush in the last 2 years. I mean, Reggie Bush and Joique Bell are probably both going to have a big role in this offense, but if I had to pick one, I'm picking Joique Bell without question.
Okay. Now, the only reason that I'm going to disagree with you here is just out of consistency purposes. Now, I think you're right. Joique Bell has caught more passes than Reggie. He's also been healthier than Reggie, which I think is something to think about.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, that's a fair point.
But that's also something
that's something to concern about, too. Yeah.
It is, absolutely. That's something that I think you do have to take into consideration. But when they're healthy, Reggie Bush touches the ball more than Joique Bell in this offense. He touched the ball at least 12 times in every game that he played last year. Now, that's not a lot. Don't get me wrong. That's not 12 touches isn't anything amazing, but it's enough where if you're Reggie Bush and you touch the ball 12 times in a game and you average 5 yards per touch, you're having an okay fantasy game. And that's the thing for me. I've obviously, if you guys know me, I'm a pretty big Reggie Bush fan over the course of the time that he's been in the NFL. He's been one of my absolute favorite players, so I am a little bit biased toward him. I do like Joique Bell still, but I still think that Reggie Bush is the guy who is going to touch the ball more this season. Now, if we're talking about going forward or if we're talking about dynasty leagues, I like Joique Bell better. But for right now, I think in 2014, I like Reggie Bush to have a better season. Just me. I think that both of them are still very close, but I like Reggie Bush by a slight edge. So we disagree on that one, but that's all right. We've both.
I mean, I don't hate Reggie Bush by any means.
Yeah.
I think they're both really good. I think if I had to pick one, I'd pick Joey Bell.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with them being very, very close. I think Reggie's just a slight edge just in terms of total touches. So, all right, let's move on to the next question, which is from MWally21. And MWally21 asks, which Giants running back is going to be the one to own by the season's end, Rashad Jennings or Andre Williams? Now, I think personally, it depends on what you're asking here. Now, your question was, who do I want to own by the end of the season? And I think that by the end of the season, in the final 3-4 games of the season, you're going to probably want to own Andre Williams. However, Tom Coughlin has a long history of being a complete asshole to rookies, and especially rookie running backs.
Yeah, look at David Wilson.
Exactly. You look at David Wilson, and you look at guys who just, for whatever reason, they make a mistake in pass protection, which is going to happen when you're a young player. You fumble the ball. You make a boneheaded decision. You have a false start, and then you find your ass on the bench for 3 weeks. And that's the thing is he has this hard-on for veterans. And I don't know what the deal is. It's worked out for him in the past. They've won 2 Super Bowls.
Couple rings.
But then they have these seasons like they had last year where it just looks like everything's fallen off the hinges. So, it's interesting how that works out for them. But the bottom line to me is that it comes down to where you're asking this question from. Now, if you're asking me who is going to produce better numbers over the course of the season, I think it's going to be Rashad Jennings. But your question was, who is the running back to own by the end of the season? And I think that, like I said, at the end of the season, I think that Andre Williams will have secured. I think he'll have secured a bigger role in the offense. I think he's the more physically skilled player. So I like to see Andre Williams. Yeah, he's looked like an absolute animal in the preseason. And frankly,
we know
Rashad Jennings has looked as well.
Yeah, but we know what Rashad Jennings is. I mean, it's not going to. Rashad Jennings is going to come out and run for 1,800 yards this year. It's just not going to happen.
Exactly. So, it really comes down to what your question is. Rashad Jennings is probably going to outscore him on the year. But is Rashad Jennings a guy who you can rely on for a week-to-week fantasy starter? I don't know. I really don't think so.
Yeah, you really got to look at the matchup and make the best decision for you. But I'm not starting Rashad Jennings every week and feeling confident about it at all.
Exactly. I mean, unless he comes out there and proves us wrong, in which case by week 3 we might be singing his praises. But I mean, to me, I've seen him produce in limited capacities with the Jaguars and with the Raiders, but he's never been a full-time back. He's never been a full-time back because he's not good enough to be a full-time back. That's the bottom line.
The one thing he has really going for him, though, is Tom Coughlin loves to run the ball around the goal line.
Yeah.
So it's not out of the question to be like, 4 weeks in, he has 5 TDs. Like, that's not crazy to think. But again, he won't score, he's not going to score 16 TDs on the air or anything. So eventually the production will take a step back if it does start out like that and Andre Williams have a bigger role in the offense, because Andre Williams looked really good. And just, generally better talent prevails, and Andre Williams is straight up more talented than Rashad Jennings.
Yeah, I agree. So let's move on to the final Q&A question this week, which is Josh McCown or Cam Newton here in week 1. Josh McCown, obviously a new member of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cam Newton, and he is going to be suffering from a little bit of a rib injury.
He's all fucked up.
So these guys are up against each other this week. So what do you think?
I mean, there's very, very few scenarios where I'm not starting Cam Newton. Just because, last year, he's Cam Newton. You know what I mean? He has that absolute 30-point game for fantasy every single week. And there's not a whole lot of guys that have that. I mean, every single week Cam Newton can go out there and absolutely win your game. And I get he's hurt and I get he's banged up. But Josh McCown doesn't have Alshon Jeffrey and Brandon Marshall anymore. Yeah. He's not under Mark Trestman anymore. He's in a new offense. This will be his first time in that offense. I mean, even if it is going to be similar to Chicago's, it's still different, And Tampa Bay's O-line, I mean, they recently acquired Logan Mankins. That's going to do big wonders probably for Doug Martin on that left side of the line.
Yep.
But still, I'm starting Cam Newton. Even if he has 4 broken ribs, I don't care. I'm starting Cam Newton.
Well, I'll tell you what. I think this is a lot closer than a lot of people might think it is. I mean, no matter what anyone is telling you in Carolina, Cam Newton's rib injury is not going to be entirely healed for this one.
Oh, and it probably won't be healed for the whole year. That's the really
Yeah.
sad part. Is, I mean, we don't know what
Right.
he'll be like for the entire year.
And that's the thing is, even if it's bothering him just a little bit, it's going to throw off his passing.
Rushing
It's going to
specifically,
make him,
too.
Yeah, and that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's going to make him more hesitant to run. Now, I also think that Tampa Bay's defense is going to take a step forward this season.
That's going to be a good defense.
They've been building that defense for a few seasons. They've been drafting really well. They've been making great free agency acquisitions. I really like what they're doing there on defense. So I think that it's going to be a tougher matchup for Cam than it has been in the past. Cam has kind of owned this defense in the past, but
I think so many good players. I mean, seriously, Levante David is the best player you don't know about.
Yeah.
That dude is seriously damn near on par with a guy like Luke Kuechly. He's an elite linebacker.
Yeah.
And then they added Eltron Werner, who's going to be very good in that Tampa 2 system. I mean, they have Mark Barron, they have Deshaun Goldson.
Right.
They added Michael Johnson. They still have Gerald McCoy, who straight up is an elite defensive. That team has so much talent on defense.
Absolutely. And they're all young. Well, not all of them, but
Goldson's a little older, but even still, like, they're so young. Tampa, like, seriously, like, just god-awful shit uniforms and all. Tampa Bay's going to be a good team in, like, maybe this year or next.
Yeah, but, I think for all the struggles that people remember Cam having last year, they forget the fact that he was a top 5 fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, he started off so bad, and he still, even despite that just terrible start, everyone thinks of that Arizona game where he looked lost.
Yep.
And then he goes after that, I'm still top 5, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah, it's just he's a guy who just puts up fantasy numbers. He runs the ball, he scores rushing touchdowns, which is so hard to come by at the quarterback position.
Ones, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. It's not just fluky. It's not Tom Brady sneaking in from the 1. It's they get down there at the 5 and Cam Newton's their goal line running back. So I mean, it's crazy to think, but with the rib injury might give us a little bit of hesitation, but I think that you have to start Cam Newton here. I don't think you can go with Josh McCown.
No, not unless we see that they are just not using him in any type of running situation because they're so concerned about his ribs.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the only way, but you got to wait and see how that plays out. You have to start Cam over a guy like Josh McCown right out of the gate. Have to.
I completely agree. So let's move on to the final segment of this week's episode, which is going to be our sleepers and our busts for the week. So why don't we start off by taking a look at our busts for the week, Dustin? At my bust of the week, I have Rashad Jennings, who is going up against Detroit. Now, we already talked about Rashad Jennings and how we're not huge fans of him on a week-to-week basis, and I think that that's because you have matchups like this against a team like Detroit, who you would think would be a good matchup. But it's really not that great. Now, Detroit they're not an elite run defense by any means, but I think that we have to look at the fact that this is a defense that held opposing teams without a rushing touchdown in 11 of their final 12 games. That's a stat that cannot be overlooked. It's not a fluky stat. 11 of their final 12 games. The only team that ran for a touchdown against them in the final 12 games was Philadelphia. And Philadelphia was running all over everybody.
I was going to say Minnesota. That's funny.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing, too, is it's like LeSean McCoy had a monster season, right? And you can't just forget about that. But, I mean,
Rashad Jennings is not LeSean McCoy. I mean,
exactly.
Yeah.
He's not going to be able to do what LeSean McCoy did against this team, and nobody else put up big fantasy numbers against them. Detroit, like I said, they didn't hold anybody to 0. They didn't completely shut anybody down, but they did not really allow very many big games, and especially toward the end of the season.
Gigantic factor in that, too, is Detroit has enough players that'll straight up just ruin your life. Yeah. I mean, they have Nick Fairley, they have Ndamukong Suh, they have even Ziggy Ansah. I mean, and the Giants' O-line has looked so damn bad.
Yep.
That there's just, I have no confidence in that offensive line to not just get completely ran over by the Giants' D-line, just ruining their lives every single play.
Yeah, the Lions' defense. The Lions' defensive line is pretty damn good. So, like you said, with him being the goal line back, that's a good possibility that he scores a touchdown, but against his defense, it's not
a given
of a lock.
Yeah, it's not a given by any means.
So I don't like him. Now, I will say that I don't hate Rashad Jennings this week, but if he's your flex, I don't mind it, but I do not like him as an RB2.
Yeah, you can't rely on him for legit production this week. You just can't. You just don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And, here's the thing. I personally like guys like Joique Bell, Shane Vereen, Chris Johnson this week. I like them all better than Rashad Jennings this week, and they're all getting started
Chris
at
Johnson's
half
a
the
good
rate.
one. Yeah, Chris Johnson's a good one for this week specifically versus Oakland.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Johnson of the New York Jets now. He is going to be up against, like he said, the Oakland Raiders, and that's the kind of thing that could be a grinded out kind of a game. But I like Chris Johnson's possibilities better than I like Rashad Jennings, and I mean it could be I could be proven wrong in this, but you're telling me that Rashad Jennings, who has never really produced at an elite level, is going to step into a new offense on a team that was god-awful, that doesn't have a good offensive line.
Terrible O-line.
Against a great defensive line, and he's going to produce big numbers? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying Rashad Jennings this week.
Yeah.
Who do you have as your bust of the week?
Victor Cruz.
Okay.
Another Giant player.
Oh, well.
And basically for the same reason we talked about. I mean, the Lions D-line is going to straight up just ruin the Giants O-line. I can't see any way that doesn't happen. So Eli's probably going to be panicking, running around. Victor Cruz did not have as good of a year as he's had in the past at all last year. He had a way down year.
True.
New offense, and we assume his role will be better in that offense, but again, we're assuming. And I just straight up don't think that they're going to have a very good day at all because of that Giants D-line just applying just crazy pressure to the Eli.
I don't know, man. I don't think you can spell elite without Eli. And
that was a thing.
Yeah, so, I mean, there it is. You've got two New York Giants this week. Are you taking Detroit over the Giants?
Oh, yeah. Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, there's no question. At home, in that building with that just trash O-line.
Yeah.
New offense, new coach for Detroit, too. So, I mean, you'll assume that they'll kind of let the dogs loose a little bit on Giants, put on a show week 1, Monday night.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yep, me too. Well, let's move on to our final thing of the week then. We have our sleeper of the week. And for me, my sleeper of the week is Pierre Thomas, who is up against the Atlanta Falcons.
I like that one.
Yeah, and I almost never recommend New Orleans Saints running backs, but for PPR leagues, I think that people are really sleeping on Pierre Thomas this season. I mean, it was so funny because about a week ago I asked Dustin, I said, do you remember who led the NFL in receptions last year? And he was adamant that it was Jamal Charles.
Yeah.
It was
Danny
not
Woodhead,
Jamal Charles.
My second guess.
Yeah,
Jamal Charles or Danny Woodhead.
Yeah. It was not either of them. It was Pierre Thomas. Pierre Thomas led the entire NFL in receptions for the running back position. So, now we've got Darren Sproles in Philadelphia, not taking receptions away from Pierre Thomas. Now, Pierre Thomas is another year older. He's another year with, they're adding more running backs like they always do.
Yep, but every single year. But there's still Pierre Thomas is always a mainstay. So
there it is. I mean, Pierre Thomas is one of the only guys who has been consistently productive in this offense. And now he does take his weeks where he doesn't do anything. And that's the unfortunate thing. There is that possibility with Pierre Thomas where he does not do anything. No. But there's always the possibility that he's going to put up great numbers, and especially for PPR.
Same PPR specifically.
He's the kind of guy who can put up 10 catches. I mean, he caught 9 passes in 2 games against Atlanta last year, which isn't spectacular, but if you consider the fact that that's 4 or 5 catches, if he gets 50 yards receiving and rushing, with the possibility of a touchdown and 4 or 5 catches, we're talking about a 16-point game. I mean, that's great for where you're playing Pierre Thomas. Now, Pierre Thomas is only being started in 17% of leagues this week, going into the week. And I love his possibilities against Atlanta. I don't think Atlanta is set up to stop everything that New Orleans is going to throw at them. I think Pierre Thomas, at least for the early part of the season, will be this team's primary running back. Now, we might see some Kyrie Robinson. We might see Mark Ingram. We might see some other guys sprinkled in here and there. But early in the season, they're going to rely on the guy who knows the offense, who's been productive in the offense, and a guy who can be their third down receiving running back, and that is Pierre Thomas. Pierre Thomas is going to play on third down, and that is huge in the New Orleans offense because they love to throw to the running back position, as we've seen with Thomas and Darren Sproles in the past.
Yep. So I like that one, no doubt.
So who is your sleeper of the week this week?
Mine is Emmanuel Sanders.
There you go.
I mean,
my sleeper of the year.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it already, Emmanuel Sanders, the Denver offense in general, but I just think that specifically for this Colts matchup, I don't know who they're going to use to cover him. I mean, if they use Vontae Davis, I don't think that's really going to work out too well for him either. I think Emmanuel Sanders is a lot faster. But more often than not, I think that Vontae Davis is going to play Demaryius Thomas. And so then it means me like Greg Toller on Vontae Davis.
Yeah.
I mean, excuse me, on Emmanuel Sanders. So I think he's going to just have a big game, and I think they're really going to feature him too. They've been designing a lot of plays for him in training camp. He looked amazing in that preseason game. They're moving him all around the field. There's no Welker this game. I think he's going to see a lot of touches in the slot. I think he's going to see a lot of touches outside, and it's not going to surprise me at all if he has catches that just rainbow deep TD for 70 yards and a TD. So I think without a doubt, I'd play him in every format I have. And as you said, I mean, he's being drafted as wide receiver 3. He has to start this week if I have him.
Yeah, completely agreed. I love Emmanuel Sanders this week. Yeah, it's crazy to think that he is not being started in every league. If you own him this week and you have a flex position or 3 wide receivers, even if you only start 2, if you don't have like Des Bryant and AJ Green as your wide receivers, if you don't have 2 elite
ones, play him.
Yeah, Emmanuel Sanders has to be in your lineup this week. I'm in love with the man. We'll see if he pans out for us this week. But that is going to do it for this first episode of Fantasy Football Swagger. I hope you guys enjoyed it, even though you had to listen to us stumble through this thing in the first episode. But we do appreciate the support. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them in the comments section below because we would love to answer them in the next episode. Thank you guys for listening. Good luck this weekend. I'm Kliquid for my buddy Project KSL. We are signing out. Thank you guys and good luck this weekend.
Bye-bye.